In the quiet town of Riverwood, the Matthews family was well known and well liked. John Matthews, a charismatic businessman, his wife Jane, a dedicated nurse, and Jane's teenage daughter Ava painted a picture of suburban bliss. However, behind closed doors, shadows of deceit and betrayal lurked. One fateful night, Ava was found dead in her bedroom and the town's illusion of peace shattered. Detective David Hunter, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving the toughest cases, was called to the scene. As he surveyed the Matthews home, he could sense the undercurrent of tension. The initial reports pointed towards a domestic dispute gone tragically wrong, but Hunter's instincts told him there was more to this story. Jane was found crumpled on the floor, wailing inconsolably as she clung to her daughter's lifeless body. John's face was a mask of shock and grief, but something about his demeanor struck Hunter as off. In the days that followed, the investigation would unravel a web of lies, betrayal, and ultimately murder. Detective Hunter arrived at the Matthews residence on a chilly autumn evening. The house, a modest two-story home with a well-manicured lawn, stood eerily silent. Inside, the once warm and inviting living room was now a flurry of activity, with uniformed officers and forensic technicians meticulously combing through the scene. Ava's room was at the end of a narrow hallway on the second floor. The door was ajar, and a pool of blood stained the beige carpet just inside the threshold. Ava lay sprawled on her bed, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. Her throat had been slashed, a brutal end to a young life filled with promise. Hunter's gaze moved around the room, noting the signs of a struggle. The nightstand was overturned, and a lamp lay shattered on the floor. He turned to the forensic officer. "What have we got?" The officer, a young woman named Carla, responded, "It's a mess. No signs of forced entry, and no murder weapon yet." Looks like she fought back, though. Downstairs, Jane Matthews sat on the couch, her face pale and tear-streaked. John hovered nearby, his arm around her shoulders. Jane's eyes were hollow, and she clung to John as if he were a lifeline. Hunter approached them, his voice gentle but firm. "Mrs. Matthews, can you tell me what happened?" Jane's voice trembled as she spoke. "I came home from work and found her like this. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anything. How could this happen?" John tightened his grip on her shoulder, his face a mixture of sorrow and anger. "We're going to find out who did this, Jane. I promise." Hunter studied John's face, noting the intensity in his eyes. He turned to his partner, Officer Johnson, who was taking notes nearby. "Get statements from the neighbors. See if anyone saw or heard anything unusual." As the investigation continued into the night, Hunter's mind raced with questions. Who could have wanted Ava dead? Was it a random act of violence or something more personal? The answers would come, but not without unearthing the dark secrets that lay hidden within the Matthews family. The Matthews family had lived in Riverwood for over a decade. John Matthews, a successful entrepreneur, owned a small chain of hardware stores. His business acumen and charm made him a respected figure in the community. Jane, his wife, was a nurse at the local hospital, known for her kindness and dedication. Ava, Jane's daughter from a previous marriage, was a bright and outgoing teenager, excelling in both academics and extracurricular activities. John and Jane's marriage appeared strong from the outside. They were often seen at community events, always together, always smiling. But behind the facade, their relationship was strained. John was often away on business trips, and Jane's demanding job left little time for family. Ava, caught in the middle, struggled with feelings of abandonment and longing for a stable family life. Ava's relationship with John was complicated. She admired his success and charm, but resented his frequent absences and the way he seemed to dominate her mother's attention. Their interactions were often tense, with Ava pushing back against John's authority. Despite this, she confided in her friends that she wished she could have a closer bond with him. Jane's love for Ava was undeniable, but their relationship was not without its challenges. As Ava entered her teenage years, the typical mother-daughter conflicts arose, exacerbated by Jane's long hours at work. Despite their disagreements, Jane was fiercely protective of Ava, always striving to provide her with the best opportunities. The Matthews neighbors, the Carters, were a significant presence in their lives. Lisa Carter, a vibrant woman with a magnetic personality, often visited Jane. The two women had become close friends, bonding over shared interests and the challenges of raising teenagers. Lisa's husband, Mark, a quiet and reserved man, worked as an accountant and kept mostly to himself. Unbeknownst to Jane, John and Lisa's friendship had crossed boundaries. Their affair began innocently enough, with casual conversations and shared drinks. But as John's discontent with his marriage grew, so did his attraction to Lisa. They found solace in each other's company, their clandestine meetings becoming more frequent and more intense. Ava, perceptive and curious, noticed the subtle changes. She saw the stolen glances, the hushed conversations, and the lingering touches. One evening, she followed John to the Carters' house, witnessing the undeniable proof of their affair. Shocked and betrayed, Ava confronted John, demanding he end the affair and tell Jane the truth. John's reaction was swift and violent. Fearful of his secret being exposed, he lashed out at Ava, threatening her to keep quiet. Ava, determined to protect her mother, refused to back down. The tension between them escalated, culminating in the tragic events of that fateful night. The Matthews' seemingly perfect life was built on a foundation of lies and deceit. As Detective Hunter delved deeper into their history, he began to see the cracks in their facade. The truth, he knew, was buried beneath layers of betrayal and anger. It was up to him to uncover it and bring justice to Ava. Detective David Hunter was known for his tenacity and keen instincts. With over 2 decades of experience, he had seen it all, from petty thefts to gruesome homicides. As he stood in the Matthews living room, he felt the familiar rush of determination. This case was personal. He could feel the weight of it bearing down on him. Hunter began his investigation by interviewing the Matthews neighbors. The Carters were first on his list. Lisa Carter, visibly shaken, recounted her interactions with the Matthews, emphasizing her close friendship with Jane. Mark Carter, on the other hand, seemed distant and evasive, his eyes darting around nervously as he spoke. Lisa admitted that she had seen John more often recently, but she attributed it to their shared social circles. Mark, when pressed, mentioned hearing arguments from the Matthews house but couldn't provide specific details. Hunter noted the inconsistencies in their statements, his suspicion growing. Back at the precinct, Hunter and his partner, Officer Johnson, reviewed the evidence collected from the crime scene. The lack of forced entry suggested that Ava knew her attacker. The struggle indicated she fought back, which meant the killer likely bore defensive wounds. Hunter decided to focus on the Matthews family dynamics. He arranged an interview with Jane, hoping to gain more insight into her relationship with Ava and John. Jane, still reeling from the shock, struggled to articulate her thoughts. She described Ava as a loving but headstrong teenager, often clashing with John over trivial matters. "Did you notice any changes in John's behavior recently?" Hunter asked, leaning forward. Jane hesitated, then nodded. He seemed more distant, more stressed. "I thought it was work-related. He was traveling a lot, and we hardly had time together." Hunter's mind raced. The frequent business trips could be a cover for something else. He needed more information about John's activities and interactions outside the family. The next day, Hunter visited John's office. His colleagues painted a picture of a dedicated but increasingly irritable man. They mentioned his frequent absences and whispered about a possible affair, though no one could provide concrete evidence. Hunter's next stop was the local coffee shop, a popular spot for the neighborhood gossip mill. The barista, a young woman with a penchant for eavesdropping, confirmed seeing John with Lisa Carter on multiple occasions. They seemed close, too close for just friends, she said, smirking. As pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Hunter's suspicion of John grew. He needed to find solid proof of the affair and connect it to Ava's murder. He decided to confront John directly, hoping to catch him off guard. John, seated in the interrogation room, maintained his composure. He denied any involvement in Ava's death, insisting that he was as devastated as Jane. Hunter pressed him about the affair, watching for any signs of guilt. John's facade cracked slightly. He admitted to spending time with Lisa, but insisted it was innocent. Hunter wasn't convinced. He could sense that John was hiding something, and he was determined to uncover the truth. As the investigation progressed, Hunter faced mounting pressure to close the case. The community was on edge and the media was relentless, but he knew that rushing to judgment could lead to a miscarriage of justice. He needed to stay focused and methodical, following the evidence wherever it led. Hunter's gut told him that the key to solving the case lay in understanding the true nature of the Matthews family dynamics and the hidden relationships that had turned their lives upside down. He was prepared to dig deep, no matter how uncomfortable the truths he uncovered might be. Jane Matthews sat across from Detective Hunter, her eyes red from days of weeping. She clutched a tissue, twisting it nervously in her hands. The grief and shock of Ava's murder had taken a visible toll on her, but there was a steely determination in her gaze. "Detective Hunter, I need you to understand. I loved my daughter more than anything," she began, her voice trembling. "We had our arguments, yes. But what mother and teenage daughter don't? She was everything to me." Hunter nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Tell me about the night Ava was killed. Where were you and what did you do?" "I was at the hospital, working a double shift. One of the nurses called in sick, and I had to cover for her. I left the house around 6 p.m. and didn't get back until after midnight. When I walked in and found Ava," Jane's voice broke, and she took a moment to compose herself. "Did you notice anything unusual when you came home?" Hunter asked gently. Jane shook her head. "No, everything seemed normal. The door was locked, and there were no signs of forced entry. I went straight to Ava's room to check on her, and that's when I found her." Hunter leaned back, considering her words. Jane's alibi seemed solid, and her genuine grief was evident. But there was still the matter of her relationship with Ava, and the tension that had been brewing in their household. "Jane, I've spoken with some of your neighbors and colleagues. They mentioned that Ava and John didn't always get along. Can you tell me more about that?" Jane sighed, wiping away fresh tears. "John tried to be a good stepfather, but Ava resented him. She felt like he was trying to replace her father. They argued often, especially about his long absences and his strict rules." "And what about you and John? How was your relationship?" Hunter probed. "We've had our ups and downs," Jane admitted. "Lately, things have been strained. He was distant, always busy with work. I suspected something was wrong, but I never imagined it would lead to this." As Jane spoke, Hunter noted the raw honesty in her words. She was a mother grieving her child, a wife grappling with the unraveling of her marriage. Despite the initial suspicion, Hunter began to believe that Jane was not involved in Ava's death. But if she wasn't the killer, then who was? The pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together, but there were still gaps. Hunter needed to dig deeper, to uncover the hidden truths that would lead him to Ava's murderer. The answer, he felt, was closer than he had initially thought. As Detective Hunter dug deeper into the Matthews family dynamics, his suspicions about John grew stronger. The rumors of an affair with Lisa Carter had to be verified, and Hunter knew that uncovering this relationship could be the key to solving Ava's murder. Hunter decided to pay another visit to Lisa Carter. She was in her garden, pruning rose bushes when he approached. Her demeanor was calm, but Hunter could see the tension in her eyes. "Lisa, I need to ask you some more questions about your relationship with John Matthews," he began. Lisa's hands trembled slightly as she set down the pruning shears. "What do you want to know?" Hunter pressed on. "There have been rumors that you and John were more than just friends. I need to know if there's any truth to that." Lisa's face paled and she looked away, struggling to find her words. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "Yes, it's true. John and we had an affair. It started about a year ago. We were both unhappy in our marriages, and we found comfort in each other." Hunter nodded, noting her admission. "Did Ava know about the affair?" Lisa's eyes widened in shock. "How did you know?" Hunter leaned in, his voice firm. "It's important, Lisa. Did Ava know?" Lisa nodded slowly. "Yes, she found out a few weeks ago. She saw us together and confronted John. She was furious, threatened to tell Jane. John begged her not to, but she wouldn't listen." Hunter felt a chill run down his spine. The pieces were falling into place. "What happened after Ava confronted John?" Lisa hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. "John was frantic. He tried to reason with Ava, but she was adamant. They argued a lot after that. He told me he was scared of what Ava might do, that she could destroy both our families." Hunter thanked Lisa for her honesty and made his way back to the precinct. He reviewed the evidence once more, focusing on John's behavior and movements. The more he thought about it, the more convinced he became that John had something to do with Ava's murder. Hunter decided it was time to confront John with the new information. He called John into the station for another interview, hoping to catch him off guard. As John sat across from him, Hunter could see the tension in his eyes. "John, I've spoken with Lisa Carter. She confirmed your affair," Hunter began, watching John's reaction closely. John's face tightened, but he remained silent. Hunter continued. "Ava found out about the affair, didn't she? She confronted you and threatened to tell Jane." John's composure cracked. He leaned forward, his voice shaking. "Yes, she found out, but I didn't kill her. I loved her like my own daughter. She was angry, but I would never hurt her." Hunter pressed on, his voice relentless. "You were afraid of what she might do. You knew she could ruin everything. What happened that night, John?" John's eyes filled with tears, and he buried his face in his hands. "I didn't mean to hurt her. We argued, she pushed me and I pushed back. She fell and there was blood. I panicked. I didn't know what to do." Hunter felt a mix of relief and sorrow. The truth was finally coming out. "John, you need to tell me everything. We need to know exactly what happened." John took a deep breath and began to recount the events of that night. Ava had confronted him again, demanding that he end the affair and tell Jane the truth. Their argument escalated, and in a moment of rage and fear, John lashed out. Ava fell, hitting her head on the nightstand. Seeing her lifeless body, John realized the gravity of what he had done. "I didn't mean to kill her," John repeated, his voice breaking. "I just wanted to stop her from destroying our lives." Hunter listened, his heart heavy with the weight of John's confession. Ava's death was a tragic result of a web of lies and betrayals. The truth was finally out, but the pain and loss it caused could never be undone. Hunter knew that John would face justice for his actions, but the real challenge would be helping Jane and the rest of the community heal from this devastating ordeal. The truth had been uncovered, but its consequences would ripple through their lives for years to come. Detective Hunter left the interrogation room, the weight of John's confession heavy on his shoulders. The case had taken a toll on everyone involved, but he felt a sense of grim satisfaction, knowing that the truth was finally out. Ava's death was no longer a mystery, and her killer would face justice. Hunter returned to his office and began to piece together the final report. He reviewed the evidence, the testimonies, and John's confession, ensuring that everything was in order. As he worked, he couldn't help but reflect on the twists and turns of the investigation. He thought back to the initial days when Jane had been the prime suspect. Her grief-stricken state and the strained relationship with Ava had made her an easy target for suspicion. But as he delved deeper, he realized that Jane's love for her daughter, despite their conflicts, was genuine and unwavering. John was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. The verdict brought a sense of closure, but it was bittersweet. The community mourned Ava's loss, and the once respected John Matthews was now a pariah, his reputation irrevocably tarnished. In the end, the story of Ava Matthews was one of sorrow but also of resilience and hope. It highlighted the fragile nature of human relationships and the profound impact of truth and justice. For Detective Hunter and the people of Riverwood, it was a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, even in the face of life's darkest moments.